Welcome to Sisters Inc., our podcast for and about Black women business owners, brought to you by Black Enterprise. I'm your host, Elisa Gums. Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in America. And on every episode of Sisters Inc., we'll sit down with one successful CEO and share how she slays the challenges of being a Black woman in business. Today's episode is all about creating a roadmap for your business. We're chatting with Marie Denee, a walking wiki, as she likes to put it, for all things plus size fashion, and the founder of the Curvy Fashionista, a media platform and community celebrating plus size people with style. Welcome to Sisters Inc., Marie, and thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Elisa, for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Well, I want to jump right into your background. When and how did you first fall in love with fashion? And how did you know you wanted to make it your life's work?
Well, okay, so because I like to call myself a nerd, I had been working in retail since maybe 15, 16. And I also was told the expectation of being the oldest grandchild, the oldest daughter, like you're going to school. And in going to school, I knew okay, well, maybe I need to get a business degree. But then I fell in love with, initially I wanted to be a psychologist, but then I found marketing. And so for me, marketing was like the psychology of selling. So I was like, okay, well, this is how I can approach it. So I started just working in retail and growing in the retail space. And then I stumbled, kind of tripped and fell into the world of content. And this opportunity that was here that nobody else was presenting it in a way. And from there, I just continue to take kind of leaps of faith that has brought me here. So it's just been kind of both how I was raised, but also like allowed for me to marry my passion for learning and unearthing and discovering things.
Okay. So you started the Curvy Fashionista back in 2008. When you were founding the company, what was your dream for it?
I've always envisioned the Curvy Fashionista to sit next to the Who What Wears, the Refinery 29s, but it being from a plus size perspective. I remember going to some kind of an event where the founders of Who What Wear were talking about their journey, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be that business owner who's running this media empire but providing resource information, because one of the things I learned through working in retail was that information and resource cultivates confidence, and confidence then allows for people to explore their personal style, explore who they are. And it's no different for plus size women. We just need more resources and information, because everything really pretty much available to us is online only, right? So I wanted to kind of fill that gap, kind of bridge that void. And that's how the Curvy Fashionista got started. That's been our impetus, our core, and obviously what I'm extremely passionate about.
That's amazing. That's like a true mission to make sure that all women, but particularly plus size women, can feel confident and to give them the information and the resources to do that. Um, Over these 15 years that you've been running the business, you've had a lot of successes. What have been some of the highlights for you?
It's interesting as a business owner, sometimes you can get so focused on a goal or a the next goal, the next milestone, that you sometimes forget to stop and explore or celebrate the wins. And so for me, I've been asking myself what kind of successes have really hit home for me. And I think for me, it's been seeing my community come together. There's been one specific event where we had a cruise, and this woman, we were going around, how did you find out about this cruise? How did you find out about TCF? And they had come on this cruise because one of their friends, who was no longer around, had introduced and brought them to one of my events in the past. And she had passed away, and they were honoring her by coming to my event. And I cried like a baby because I didn't realize the impact the community reached. I didn't realize that. I've got goosebumps as I'm like sharing this story, because it is in that moment that I realized like how much bigger than myself it was. Like, I've always known that, but to see it like right in your face, like they spent their monies to get on a plane, to get on a boat, to hang out with me and my crew for what is it, 4 or 5 days. That's a huge investment or a huge commitment. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, I just felt so honored, so grateful at that moment. So for me, like, that is where I have found like one of my most recent highlights, and that was in like 2018-ish. Um, but that has been a moment that I'll never forget. Like, I will always look back on, and I still am in communication with those women to this day. Right? Like, they became my friends because I'm like, oh my gosh, this I want to help honor your friend's memory as well. And so, but I think when we look at success as a kind of definition, like for me, I've been learning right now to redefine success. For me, like, success is peace. Success is a peace of mind. For me to be able to slow down, that soft girl life, right? Like, and really just kind of just exist without like the pressures. And so for me to get to a space where I have those things, and like each day takes me a little bit closer to that journey, because I'm trying to do 1% more each day to bring me to that space. So I think it's more about a mindset than like a destination. But yes, there are highlights. Yeah, I mean, I could say, oh, I was a Route 100. Um, I was on Route 100 from 2017 or 2018. But like, that is amazing. I was on the list with Beyonce. Like, woo, like, go ahead. But then at the same time,
Yes.
it's like, those moments where they tug at your heart, where I have events and women are coming to me crying, or their daughter, they brought their daughter, and you see their daughter transform and blossom. Like, I actually had one person who brought her daughter one year. She was like, she's 13. Can she come? Like, is this okay for kids? And I'm like, sure. Like, so she came. She was a little quiet little one. The next year she came, brought her girlfriends, had started a YouTube channel. And then then fast forward like 2 years later, she's sending me showing me her graduation pictures, like seeing her blossom because she was exposed to this community. Those are successful moments for me. Being able to see how I'm providing resource, and how that resource has directly positively impacted somebody else.
You mentioned leaps of faith. And even with all the success you've had, you've also shared that for most of the lifespan of your business, it's been all organic growth and lots of leaps of faith. No business plan, no strategy. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So when I say I accidentally stumbled into this, I started off as a blog, and I'm like an OG blogger starting in 2008. There was no go to school to be a content creator. There were no classes in social media marketing. Social media barely existed at that time. So the organic growth, the growth of social media you started seeing certain uh, frameworks being introduced in this space. And it was very much the wild, wild west. And honestly, it got me to where I am. But in order for me to get to where I need to go now, like, now I'm at a space where I've been learning, applying strategy. I've been, last year, I call it my year of foundation, where I went through an accelerator program. I went through a business boot camp program to really give me the fundamentals of the operational side of business, the business of media. And especially because I didn't know what I was growing into, right? I started off as a blog. I didn't know what Black enterprise like online was called. I didn't realize the word or the phrase digital media publisher. I would try to Google online media, and Google would default to social media. Like, trying to find what I had grown into was the challenge, but once I found it, I felt all these things kind of lock into place because now I could start developing and cultivating an ecosystem and to start to really learn and understand the business of media. And shout out to Alfred because he was actually a mentor in the accelerator program of mine where I was able to really understand my mindset shift and how it needed to change, to really understand the business side of media and how I needed to shift my mindset in order to really understand and kind of buckle down in order to operate as a media publisher. And so I think some things do start off organically, and there's that slight moment where this is like a hobby or I don't know, you're just kind of floating around where it switches from hobby to business. And sometimes if you're not quick enough to catch that, you can find yourself not in trouble, but challenged later down the road because you did not catch that little shift. And that's kind of been where I have been, in that realizing that was the moment where I should have like buckled down and like started to learn a little bit more and approach this with more of a business kind of mindset. There were things that I just could not conceptually understand because it was so organic. And now that I know, like, oh, I'm a media publisher, now that I know I have an ecosystem of resource, so I can send out an email and ask questions and get direction that I need to, like, that has been so rewarding, so fulfilling, and extremely motivating. So leaps of faith got me here, but what's going to get me to that next level is really the strategy, the business foundation, and the ecosystem and the community that I am nurturing and developing now.
For
I
our
had to,
listeners, when you shouted
yeah,
out Alfred, yes, that's Black Enterprises Executive Vice President Alfred Edmond Jr., who has been one of your mentors through the Bomisi Accelerator
yep.
that you mentioned. But as you're talking about realizations and about doing the foundational work, looking back, what are some of the signs that you could see in the way that your business functioned that let you know that there were cracks in the foundation, so to speak?
Sometimes it's budget, right? Not knowing how to anticipate or build a budget. Because, yes, you could put numbers on a spreadsheet, but there is strategy and there is insight and information that goes into the creation of a budget. The mindset, like, so not only was I going through this accelerator program, but I also had bookkeeper girlfriend like sit me down and break down the ins and outs of an operational budget and how to approach it. And one of the things that Alfred had said that was the most mind-blowing kind of piece that really like opened and blew my mind. He said, Marie, you have been creating content to create revenue, but you need to create revenue to create content. And I sat with that and I was like, hell, okay. Like it started to make sense because for so long there was only creating content to create revenue because you were just creating content not knowing that it could create revenue. But now I had to shift that mindset. And so it allowed for me to, even when I approach my operational budget, like I could put down revenue sources, but I wasn't leading with expenses, right? So I had to, and I didn't realize or understand certain things. It didn't click for me. But once it did, I was like, oh, okay, this is what I have been missing all these years, right? This is what I've been missing journey of understanding like the operational. So sometimes you'll feel like you need to grow and you kind of just start reaching. So the next thing is like when you feel like you need to grow and you start reaching for help however you can get it, that's not how you're supposed to do it, right? And but that is kind of the organic way of just reaching out for help. However, just as important to have a game plan for growth. And I didn't know that. And because you're in it and you're so entrenched, time you stop and look up, you're like, how did I get here? Like, how did I didn't think about, I didn't do a people plan. I didn't do a growth plan strategy. I didn't sit down and do these things. And so by the time I realized, I'm like, oh, that is where I messed up. I'm a Virgo, so I'm going to always analyze things. I'm gonna always go back and be like, this is where you messed up, Marie. Financial planning, like that operational budget, like that is key because that is where mistakes are made. That is where it directly impacts the people, your freelancers, your contractors, like your team members. And like that is where you really have to be like realizing like this is a business, not a charity. You also have to learn how to hold yourself accountable. Like for me, I may care about you and really want to make sure you're good, but I also have to learn how to hold you accountable, right? So it's about learning how to hold your team members accountable and not be afraid of being the quote unquote bad person or the mean person. And that is something I had to learn how to let go of, especially like through therapy and all of these like fun tools, because that acceptance piece for me dealing with abandonment and seeing how abandonment showed up as a business owner for me and how my people pleasing um, kind of actions created more issues and problems in the business. So it's really important. And I'm kind of taking you guys through like the multiple different moments of realizing, but it's really important that you recognize, give yourself grace, but also like give yourself space to learn, apply, and 100 with yourself. Because we could sit here and lie to ourselves all the time, but like the reality is like you're not going to grow unless you actually apply, create, pause, get the strategy, get the game plan. I mean, we saw it with Beyonce and her Renaissance in her movie. She said it took 4 years to plan her tour. Four. I'm like, she took 4 years. I can take a year or two to plan these ideas that I have. Like for some reason in my head, I'm like, I got to hurry up and do it. And then I create unnecessary pressures, unnecessary stress, unnecessary actions on myself because I feel like I have to hurry up and get it done. So that's my very long
Yeah.
winded answer.
What would Beyonce do? That's a whole new approach to business.
I mean, she's definitely, you can love her as the artist, but if you pay attention to her as the business owner, there are so many gems that drop down.
So I really appreciate that you're starting to get into the things that you had to learn about yourself, and especially how you as a person related to you running your business. Can you share what that process was like for you of stopping to create a roadmap, and especially mid journey, since you were already an established business? I mean, was there any amount of sort of, it's too late for this, I'm embarrassed that I haven't done this already, that you had to deal with? Or was it just, let me get to work?
So I actually laugh about this, but it was kind of like God, universe, spirit, ancestors, whomever kind of wiped my slate clean. So sometimes life will course correct you if you aren't on the right path. And about 2.5 years ago, that was for me. And I recognized that and I didn't wallow in it. I was like, okay, let me pause, let me regroup, let me like, all the rethink, re-strategize, like rest, restore. And first thing was me like getting into this accelerator program allowed for me to understand I'm not alone, right? Like to understand as a business owner, I think we put these kind of interesting kind of expectations on us that we think we need to have or need to understand. So I was very fortunate that I did not have that shame. I understood and already knew like I had made mistakes. I had messed up or I did not know, or like whatever those things were, I owned that, right? And so I immersed myself in trying to find programs, um, networks, kind of ecosystems to help provide that support that I needed. And because of that, I was able to start to get into the programs that were actually for me. So this Bomisi program, which helped me to understand the business of media and to help me have a clear definition of what I was growing into, which then allowed for me to find the resources, the webinars, the programs, all of that that I needed in order for me to start, studying and really becoming a steward or a student of this new world. My mind was at that place to, I kind of like was kind of forced into that, like, okay, I'm growing, I don't know what I'm doing. I need information. What do they say? The lesson shows up when the student is ready. Like, that was kind of like the situation for me. The boot camp that I went through, it was the Pace Business Boot Camp, and it was from the Madam C.J. Walker with Essence Ventures, and so Essence New Voices or something, Essence Voices, but it was like a 14-week program, and it was 2 days a week, 2 hours each day. It was intense, and one of those days was purely like academic kind of, and then the other day was more mindset and emotional support, right? So to help us with this transition, and it was specifically created for businesses who were the track I was on for scale and I think growth and scale. So it was made specifically for business owners who had already been established, and they're trying to like really instill or insert some structure into their business. That is what I was able to do, take advantage of, and apply and learn these strategies in the moment, especially exactly where I was at, right? So I kind of call it like right now my space of kind of the phoenix rising from the ashes. These past 2 years for me have been really tantamount to like me understanding, kind of growing into who I am, even my next level of my purpose or my business kind of goals. You kind of put it out there in the universe. I want to be that, and the universe is like, okay, we're about to move and make all of this happen, but you got to be ready. And I was receptive and I understood. And so I was humbled and, really understanding the meaning of gratitude, really understanding the meaning of mindset. And it allowed for me to take these lessons, apply them, and really allow myself the space for growth and for strategy to show itself.
During that process of creating this roadmap for your business, what are some of the questions that you wrestled with, either about yourself as a CEO or about the business itself?
I asked myself, what does success look like for me? And that's why I really started trying to redefine that success word. I asked myself, what type of leader do I want to be? And what type of leader, what type of impact? Because then I started thinking about like, okay, well, I'm putting my crown back on. Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Right? Like, how do I want this to be received or shown? And then it's like, okay, well, what do I want to do in 5 years? Like 5 years from now, where am I going to be? How am I going to be? Why am I going to be? So and by asking myself those questions, it kind of allowed for me to really do some, I guess, shadow work or like healing, self healing, kind of addressing like insecurities, um, what do you call it, past traumas that have like influenced decisions and choices I've made in the past. So in this roadmap, it's like in creating this roadmap for myself, it allowed for me to approach this planning process with more confidence and self assuredness because I was able to have those real conversations with myself that I probably have never had because I didn't know that I could have them. I didn't know how to have them, and I didn't know what tools I needed to make them. But now I have been exposed to some of those things and have been very fortunate to have made like the connections, the realizations, and still be kind of chugging along, still making those like um certain milestones for myself. So it's really kind of been mindset mindset has been like that biggest key for me in this roadmap journey.
Yeah, those are great questions to ask yourself. What does success look like for you? What kind of leader do you want to be? And in 5 years, where do you want to be? How do you want to be? Why do you want to be? Like, those are good questions.
Thank you.
You said mindset is the big thing for you. So I will say, after going through an accelerator, after going through a business boot camp, what you called a time of transformation, what's the most significant change in how you now approach your business?
One, I'm no longer rushing, right? I'm no longer like, oh, I have an idea, let's do it. It's now, okay, I have an idea. Like, let's think this through. What would be needed? I ask I break those things down. What will be needed? Is it in alignment with our brand? Is it in alignment with our business objectives? Is it in alignment, period, right? So I pause and I slow down instead of just like rushing into something. Um, and also for me, the mindset shift has been about from moving from scarcity to abundance and understanding, and what has aided that is really understanding what gratitude means and practicing and applying gratitude every day. And that has given me the space, like when someone pisses me off, I'm not immediately jumping to defense mode, right? I'm not immediately discounting it because, like, are you challenging me? Like, I don't have those anymore, right? It's more about like, let me pause and think about this. Like, and then I can ask more questions before I give any kind of feedback or thought. It has allowed for me to, like, having shifting mindset, like, has allowed for me to receive these lessons that I had, like, that has been given to me through the accelerator, through the business boot camp, and just through my relationships with folks. I can apply them. Girl, even my blood pressure is down.
If that is not the surest sign that you have found some peace, I don't know what is.
I mean, like, that's like real, because sometimes we don't realize as a business owner just how much our body. I must add, I've also learned how to take better care of myself,
Mm-hmm.
because, like, that was like the first major key for me, because I had been so conditioned, or like used to, like, everything I get from the business, putting it back into the business. Everything I get, I put it back in. But I didn't take care of me. I did not take care of
Yeah.
me, or even learn how to prioritize myself, learning how to pay myself, learning how to allow myself to not work Sunday to Saturday, right? Like, now I don't even turn on my computer on the weekends. I don't even go into my office on the weekends. I don't even, I just, it's just, I've learned how to establish and create boundaries for myself, right? That is so key. Like, I read this book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Tawwab. Yo, that book. Like, and she's a black woman, so she talks about boundaries, or the lack of them, growing up as a black woman. So it's like you see yourself in all of these different circumstances and situations, and you're like, oh, this applies here, 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 and here. And it allowed for me to really start learning how to feel more comfortable with establishing boundaries. But the more it even highlighted the importance of establishing boundaries for my personal life with my business, because I didn't have any hobbies. I was over here like uh Schmeagol from my precious, like from Lord of the Rings. Like, he was a hobbit and then turned into this little. He had emaciated himself because he was chasing this thing, and the best analogy I could give is like, I was that hobbit and I turned into Schmeagol because of, like, pouring everything into my business. I did not take care of me, and
Yeah.
I realized, like, okay, well, what are my hobbies? What are my personal goals? Like, now I realize I love to read. I've learned how to give myself back.
A life. It sounds like a
Yeah,
life.
yeah. And so, I think it's also key too as a business owner, that especially as a Black woman business owner, that we sometimes feel like we need to take on everything and be superwoman and be like all these things and holding all these bags or holding all of the weight on ourselves. But like, it can only go so far, because you will, like, life will stop you. Your body will stop you if you don't pay attention. And so, and those are some of the things that happened to me, where I had to really just be like, okay, you need to do better. And like, I find myself feeling really blessed to be able to have gone through that recognition and understanding about how to take care of me as a business owner, because if I'm not okay, my business is not okay.
Yeah.
And it's allowed for me to also be more receptive, not so withdrawn, a little bit more engaged, to reach out, be like, "Hey, Miss Alyssa, how you doing?" Like, to be able to engage with folks without feeling fear or shame or any of those things, because I've been taking better care of me.
Wow. As someone who has now put in the time and the effort to get strategic about your growth, what's your best advice for other entrepreneurs about how they can be intentional about where their business is going?
Um, Two things. Find your ecosystem, right? So like finding your mentor, finding your business besties that will hold you accountable, that will not BS you, right? That was something that I was missing. I needed mentors. I needed to like really understand. I needed that ecosystem of understanding the space that I was operating or growing into. And then I think it's just as important to educate yourself, especially if you're growing to a space that you don't know how. There are so many different programs, collectives now for Black women business owners, that you can really afford, you can't afford to not know anymore, right? Like, so for me, like, I couldn't afford to not know. It was literally damaging my business. And for me, I had to, like, instead of like, don't be like me and wait until like, life stops you. Like, be proactive. Find, connect with the local programs, connect with the city, state programs. With like, there's so much resource and information. It's going to be important that you educate yourself, put yourself in programs to enrich, to challenge, and to push you. So it's like, education, like, you never stop learning. And in the way that social media has been going and growing, like, it's so important that you're able to adapt and know what's coming, and be able to, AI now, right? Like, AI, for me, AI is the new like internet. Like back in the day when people were like, what's this internet? I'm not gonna, right? And then when businesses refuse to adapt to online, they kind of fell by the wayside. Like, that's how I see AI. So it's like, okay, well, who's talking about it? Let me sit in on a webinar so I can learn how these people are applying it. Like, those are the things that you have to focus on, like that education for self, for business, and for growth.
Thank you so much, Marie, for sharing your small business success story. Everyone out there, please take a look at the company website, thecurvyfashionista.com. You can also follow them on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Curvy Fashionista, or on Pinterest and X at TCF Style. Check out the podcast channel on blackenterprise.com to find Sisters Inc. and other podcasts from Black Enterprise writers, editors, and experts. Be sure to subscribe to Sisters Inc. on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Or if you like what you hear, show us some love by leaving a 5-star review, or put a sister on by spreading the word. I'm Elisa Gums with Sisters Inc. for Black Enterprise. Thank you for listening.